If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.
Caliber of player. By that I mean defensive backs in the National Football League and what that represents, the athletic talent that represents. The difference between what they saw in college and what they see in the pro game is vastly different than an offensive lineman to a defensive lineman, a linebacker, that type of, you know what I'm saying? I think the caliber
we still see a lot of midgets at cornerback.
Well, it's not just the size. I'm talking about sheer athleticism and great football players. I think that's why young receivers take longer to mature, because they're facing the absolute, there's more of a disparity between them and who they're facing than maybe you face coming out as a rookie someplace else, right?
But that's a good point. I think in looking at college football, when you talk about separation, these receivers are able to get open by 2, 3, 4 yards. In the NFL, the separation might be a half yard, and the coach will say, he's open, throw the ball to him. You got to get the ball to him, but there's no space. It's totally different. These corners are very fast, very, very athletic. If you look at the corners, starting corners in the NFL, if you want to draft a starting cornerback to be a starting cornerback in the NFL, you better draft them in the first round, and which every team does. If you go look at all the starting corners in the NFL, they're almost all first-round picks. And so every year you'll see a run on corners. They all go in the first, all the top guys, and then there's a huge, huge drop-off. You have almost no chance of drafting a starting corner in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round because those guys can't run. If you don't run a 4.2 or 4.3, your chances of being a starting corner in the NFL are almost obsolete.
So by that definition then, if you have 2 players, a receiver and a cornerback, this is what you were alluding to earlier, maybe we can explain to the fans that all things being equal, which they never are, so it's a stupid thing to start out with, but I'll say it anyway. A receiver and a corner, given the same relative ranking, you got to go with the corner, right? Just because of what you said and the number of busts at receiver, and if you want a great one, you better get him the first. Doesn't that mean that you have to take a corner?
I think it does. I think in looking at, what we do is break each position down and look at all the percentage of hits and percentage of misses. One of the reasons we drafted Ben Grubbs a couple of years ago is because we knew he would be a good player. And it wasn't guard, it wasn't a sexy pick. Who really wants to draft a guard at the bottom of the first round? But we felt like we wanted a solid, safe pick to put in the offensive line, a guy that will play for 10 years. And we got that. And if you look at the first round, we did that study I was talking about, center, guard, safety, tight end, inside linebacker, those 5 positions, if you draft a player, those 5 positions in the 20s, you're almost not guaranteed, because there's no guarantees, but you're probably going to hit on that guy who is going to be a very, very good player, because they're not, what we always talk about is drafting the best player at his position. And in any given draft, let's face it, if you draft Brandon Pettigrew this year with the 26th pick, he's going to be the best tight end at his position. He's probably going to be a pretty good player. If you draft Evan Britton from Arizona, he's going to be the 5th or 6th tackle probably selected, and there's going to be a drop-off. And what you're basically doing is drafting for need, and he's probably not going to be as good.
Well, I would say also, you just identified the least sexy positions on the field outside of kicker. I mean, you're talking about safeties and tight ends and those guys. Obviously, when you drafted Ed Reed, you're taking the #1 safety. When you're drafting Todd Eaton, you're taking the #1 tight end. Nobody wants those guys in the top 15 or 20, right?
Nobody wants them unless you drafted Ray Lewis, and everybody wants them.
We did okay on that. Brian Billick, Eric DeCosta, we're out here. We're live at the Padonia Station. We're brought to you by Billick Ultra. This is our pre-draft party. We'll take our Fairgrounds Auto Body right around the corner. Keep up the appearance and the value of your car. Fairgrounds Auto Body and Tony repairs all makes and models and works with all insurances. Call 410-561-0811 or visit fairgroundsautobody.com. We're at Padonia. We've got some Michelob Ultras. We've got a lot more football to talk about with the coach, Eric DeCosta, Brian Billick. I'm Nestor Aparicio. We're back for more on Wnst live from Padonia Station right after this.
If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.